Hello?
Yes, Mr. Sammartino?
Yes?
Hi, this is Felix calling from
Yes,
Pipebomb Radio.
Felix.
You are definitely on the air, and you're actually joining us here. My name is, of course, it's me, Felix, and my co-host, Austin.
Okay.
Austin James, how are you doing today?
Hello, Austin. I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's an honor to speak to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We both actually just have a couple of questions apiece, and
Okay.
I will start it off. And I'm actually very curious because I actually was blessed enough to actually be there to see this. But I actually want to get your feel. How did you feel it went? Did you feel like it returning home to bring some to go back home to Madison Square Garden and sell it out? Not 187 times, folks, but actually 188 times now for the Hall of Fame. I actually was there to see you get inducted, sir. How did all that feel? I mean, did you enjoy WrestleMania week? Did you get to see a lot of old friends? What was your take on it?
Yeah, unfortunately, no, I didn't get to see a lot of old friends because they really had me on a crazy schedule. I had to do so many interviews, and that's the only thing that was too tough that I didn't get to. I would have loved so much to have had the opportunity to sit down with some old friends, and talk about some of our yesteryears and what have you. But I never got the opportunity because they just had me go from morning till night, and then like the day of the Hall of Fame. Even though it didn't start at 8 at night, but they actually picked me up, I believe it was at 1 o'clock, and took me to the garden because we had a lot of interviews and stuff in the back. And before I went to the garden, I was doing interviews at the hotel. So then at night, after the Hall of Fame, I didn't get back to my hotel till like 2 in the morning. And then I had to get up early again because they had more interviews set up. So, it was very difficult to enjoy everything because I didn't have the opportunity to do any of the things that I would have loved. But as far as then, when it did come time to the Madison Square Garden, the Hall of Fame, there's no question that when my turn came up to go up on that stage, so many memories I have for Madison Square Garden that there's absolutely was exciting because I never thought that I would ever appear in a garden again, and so that was the most exciting thing of the whole journey for me.
I can definitely say that getting to see you at the very end after you made your speech and people who were definitely into it, I can tell it was that to me the icing on the cake was getting to see you and Vince embrace at the end of the Hall of Fame. To me, that almost like it was just the stamp of approval. It's just like he's official now. He's in the Hall of Fame, and his legacy will live on in WWE forever.
Well, I didn't expect that when Vince came on stage. That was unexpected, but he did. He came on stage and he did what he did. It was fine. Like I say, I didn't know he was going to do that because we did meet earlier on in the garden. That's the first time I met with Vince in many years, and I thought that was it. But then at the end of my speech, as you say, he came on, and that was a good gesture on his part, and it was fine.
Absolutely. And I'm actually, Austin, did you have a question for Mr. Sammartino?
Yes, sir. And I don't want to. When I ask this question, I don't. It's no disrespect to you whatsoever. So I'm just going to share. Well, without a doubt, your title reign was the longest and most historic one in history. But how do you feel like when you lost the title?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I almost held it 8 years, less a couple of months the first time. And it was such a grueling schedule back in those days that I wrestled every day. And in fact, 2 Sundays out of the month, I used to go to Toronto for the Maple Leaf Garden because I had spent a year and a half in Canada for Frank Tunney's promotions. And when he asked me after I became champion in New York if I would come and do the Maple Leaf Garden 2 Sundays out of the month, I couldn't say no to him because he was very good to me. He gave me an opportunity when I came to Canada, and like I said, I spent a year and a half there. But it made it very difficult for me because that left only 2 days out of the month for me to go home and see my family, and that was very, very difficult. And when you go through almost 8 years with that kind of a schedule, it takes a very, very big toll on your body. I was at one, if anybody who knows me would tell you that I would never take an aspirin or much as a painkiller or anything, and yet I was hurting. I was hurting, and the pain, it wasn't going away, and it came a time when I felt like I really wanted out because I was hurting too badly, number one. Number two, when you're hurting real bad, even though you do your very, very best that you can, I didn't feel that it was really good enough, and I didn't feel that to a degree, I felt that the fans were not getting their money's worth. When you feel that you can, when you're not 100%. So when I lost that belt, it was almost a relief because now I had an opportunity to rest my body and heal my body, and so the only bad thing was that I didn't realize that the fans were going to be that disappointed because when I lost the title, the quiet in the garden was unbelievable. You could hear a pin drop, and I couldn't believe it, because I figured, Koloff won the title, and I figured people were going to boo or something, because he was a villain that they did not like. But instead, it got so quiet, like they were in shock. And as I made my way to the dressing room, a lot of people were literally crying and telling me stuff like, "Bruno, we still love you. You'll always be the best. You'll always be the champion." And then with that, when I went in the dressing room, I felt a little depressed because I felt so bad to see that the fans felt that bad because I didn't expect that,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I actually wanted to touch on a subject that I happened to see, which kind of was, I would almost say maybe your model, so to speak, because in many interviews that I had seen that you'd always mentioned you said you never took drugs, just oatmeal and hard work. This leads into my question, at what age did you start working out? Like what intrigued you about wanting to get physically fit and so forth?
Well, if you say you were there, you heard me. I was in Italy during the war, and we hid in the mountains for 14 months from the Nazis, and we literally starving. My mother made some trips because my father was in America. He got, he was stuck here because they closed all passages. He had just come here to work. And when the war came, they closed all passages, so he was stuck here. He couldn't come back. And my mother was stuck there with all the children. And she used to have to sneak down that mountain, which was a ridiculous journey, very long, to try and get some food. While the Nazis were sleeping upstairs, she was sneaking in the basement of our home and from the back and get a little sack that she carried with her and put in whatever she could find, potatoes, corn, flour, whatever. And it was very, very difficult time. And then the last 2 months of the war, I got very sick. Nobody knew what it was. It turned out to be a rheumatic fever. So that after the war, when we come home, I was sick for 3.5 years. In fact, my mother told me that there was no hope that I would survive, that I was going to die. And my mother wouldn't hear of that, and she did all kinds of things to try to help me. And so when we came to America, I was like 84 pounds, and I was 14 years old, and I experienced bullying because we were different and couldn't speak the language, my brother and I, while we were trying to go to school to learn the language, these so-called bullies, because we were different and speak the English or anything, they would pick on us and always come home with a black eye or a bloody nose or a cut lip. And one day, one fella felt sorry for us, I guess, and he introduced us to the Y. That's the first time in my life I saw weights. And that's how I really got started, and couldn't lift anything when I first went there, but I kept going, and pretty soon, my appetite was growing, and I started putting on a little bit of weight, and I started growing some muscle, and I was getting bigger. And then when I got Healthy and Alpha, and I was going to high school by now, I got involved in wrestling. And so I had a two-sport thing. I was wrestling and I was weightlifting. And the bigger I got, the harder I trained. And 10 years later, from when I started, I went from 84 pounds to 275 pounds. So, I mean, I practically lived at that gym. I trained so much.
That is very cool. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so who influenced you? Has any person influenced you to become a professional wrestler?
I'm sorry. Would you repeat that? I couldn't hear you well.
No problem. Was there any particular person who influenced you to become a professional wrestler?
Who talked to me into becoming a professional wrestler?
Was there anybody that influenced you to be one? Yeah.
No. What happened was that after high school, I was actually offered a scholarship at the University of Pittsburgh for wrestling, but I didn't take it because I had difficulty in high school because, like I said, I barely spoke any English when I even started high school, and I didn't feel that I could cut it academically at the University of Pittsburgh, where I was offered a scholarship. But they allowed me to keep common training there. But while I kept training in wrestling, and I was also competing in weightlifting, I appeared on a television show because I had won a championship. And a wrestling promoter happened to be in Pittsburgh because they used to do live TV shows back then. It was called studio wrestling. And he had come in from Washington, D.C., and he watched, I guess he was looking through the channels, and he happened to see when I was on with a fellow named Bob Prince. And Bob Prince was interviewing me about my wrestling and my weightlifting. And when this gentleman named Rudy Miller, when he heard all this, when he went to the studio the next day, he inquired if anybody knew me. And one of the fellows working there had gone to school with me, and he lived in my neighborhood here in Pittsburgh. And so he told Rudy Miller that, and all that. And Miller asked him if I would come down next week. Well, I went down the following week, and he questioned me about a lot of things. And then he asked me if I would come to Washington. And that's when I met Vince McMahon Sr. and Toots Mond, who were partners, in their promotion. And that's how I got started.
That's very cool. Now, I actually wanted to ask you, I noticed, excuse me, that a lot in the history of wrestling that up to my point that I've seen, a lot of professional wrestlers usually would make the transition into becoming a broadcast journalist, and I remember seeing you dabble a little bit as a commentator. Did you enjoy your time as a commentator? Was it something that you weren't really feeling? Do you feel like you did a good job? How was that adventure as a commentator?
Well, I was still wrestling, and then in 1978, Argentino Rocca, if you remember, he was doing color commentating with Vince McMahon Jr., and Rocca got sick and he passed away. He died. And they wanted a replacement, and I said to Vince McMahon Sr., I think I would like to do that, even though I was still wrestling. But so what I would do is when we would tape, by that time it was no longer live TV. We were taping show. And so I would go every 3 weeks. We would tape three shows for 3 weeks, and during the rest of the time I was just wrestling, like everybody else. And I actually did enjoy that part. I did it for 3 years, back 78 to 81. And yes, I liked it, and I thought from watching it and everything else time later, I thought that considering I'd never had any training or experience with that, I did think I was doing a good job at it.
You know what? I definitely have to agree with you. I think you did a great job, and I feel like anything you've ever really done, you've always either given it your all, which you should in this case, and that's kind of going into where my next question was. I noticed that you're a big promoter, or what's the word I want to use? You definitely are against bullying, of course, as you mentioned. I wanted to inquire your thoughts on WWE's Be a Star campaign, their anti-bullying campaign that they do. Have you heard anything about that? And if so, what are your thoughts?
Well, honestly, I had not heard anything about it, but any program of such, I think, is necessary because we've seen too many ugly situations where kids, that were being cases. We've heard of even these kids who couldn't take it anymore, who either turned very violent as a result of it, and some even committed suicide. So I definitely think that this is something that should be looked into. And if they are going to do something about it at WWE, I take my hat off to them, because I think it's very important, because I think bullying does exist, does go on, and goes on quite a bit, I believe. So I think it's very good that it's bringing attention to it, and that something hopefully will be done.
Absolutely. And at this point, I wanted to ask you: you've definitely faced quite a number of greats in wrestling history. Was there ever a person that was, what's the word I want to use? I would definitely say difficult to work with for any particular reason, or somebody you really just didn't want to work with, or was there somebody that you actually enjoyed working with?
Oh, I liked wrestling people like Killer Kowalski. I liked wrestling Ivan Koloff, Turo Tanaka, Don Leo Jonathan, Ray Stevens. I could go on with a long list, but there were definitely some that, because of either their style or their tactics or whatever, were not the most enjoyable for me. He was very a big name, but do you remember the original Sheik in Detroit? He and I, for whatever the reason, I just never felt good about the matches I had with him. I wanted to leave the ring every time I wrestled, feeling that the people really got their money's worth, and when they left, that they would be excited about what they saw and what a great show it was and what have you. And when I met opponents that I didn't feel that because of styles or whatever, that the matches were up to par, I felt bad about it. And there were certain guys that it was very difficult, at least on my part. The Sheik was one of them. I never felt like I had what I'd call a great match with him. And there were some other people, God rest their soul, they're gone, but like a Jess Ortega or Tank Morgan, or there were others, Crusher Verdue, that you tried the best you could, but like anything else, they just weren't the greatest of matches.
So you're talking earlier about the pain you experienced in wrestling. Does that pain still affect you today? Well,
sure, you always have some pain, but I've been very lucky because I've had a couple of wonderful doctors. I had one neurosurgeon who did 3 operations on my back, and then I had another great surgeon who had hip replacement with, and when I broke my neck, I had another great surgeon by the name of Edstrom who helped me tremendously, because for a while when I broke my neck, I had no feeling on my left side. So considering all that I've gone through, and the injuries and the size of the injuries that I've had, I consider myself very, very fortunate today, because, believe it or not, as old as I am, I still work out every day, 3 days a week. I do road work, and 3 days a week I lift weights. Now, not of course like the old days. I can't do that, But the point is that I do work out every day and try to stay as fit as I can at this stage of my life.
You're actually in better shape than most men who are actually my age, and I'm going to be 35 years old, and you're in definite better shape than most kids my age.
Well, where have you seen me to say that? What have you seen? Have you seen photos of me or something?
I actually have. I've actually visited your website.
Oh, so you see that photo of me when I was 72?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Flexi. Yeah, well, that's true. That was taken right in front of my garage. This fellow named Marty Lazare says, Bruno, he says, come on, please. He says, I have to take a picture. He says, because people won't believe that you're 72. And so he took that photo, and he's been showing it everywhere.
I actually wanted to ask one final question on my behalf. What was it like working with the likes of Gorilla Monsoon and even Andre the Giant?
Well, Monsoon was an amazing guy. You know, Monsoon weighed 420 pounds. For a guy, 420 pounds, and I guess he was about 6 foot, maybe 4 or 5. I'm not positive. But I thought that he was amazing because he was very agile. He had good stamina. I mean, one time I wrestled him in Madison Square Garden for like an hour, 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
I mean, yeah, and it was a good match, too. A very good match. For a big man, he's a guy that I could have some really good matches with. Andre was a tag team partner of mine a few times, but we never wrestled each other.
Was he really awesome to work? I mean, as far as to work with and the person backstage to talk to as well?
Well, with me, yeah, because I got along very well with Andre. I never had any problem. There were some who said he was a little bit on the moody side or this or that. I did not experience that. I got along with Andre very well.
That's cool. And for those who are listening tonight, if they ever wanted to reach out to you and contact you, you just recently started a Twitter account? Am I correct?
Yeah, but they can get me and most information by Bruno Sammartino info.com.
That is his actual website where you can check out all kinds of great memorabilia, videos, right, stories, and all kinds of good stuff.
Right.
But Austin, did you have any final questions for Mr. Sammartino?
Yes, sir. One more question for me. So you faced so many greats in your career, but is there anybody right now that's wrestling that you would love to face?
That I would like to wrestle?
Yes, sir.
You mean if I went back 30, 40 years ago?
Absolutely.
No, I mean like anybody wrestling right now. Like, is there anybody that impresses you that you would like to face?
You know what? Wrestling, in my opinion, has changed so much, and it's so different that I've been asked by others to say, how would you compare maybe Cena or some other names that they've mentioned with some of the guys from yesteryear? You know, I have a very difficult time making that comparison because for the longest time, for about 20-some years, I never watched wrestling anymore. I'm just getting to learn now some of the names of these guys. But when you watch TV and I see some of these matches that go 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, or 7 or 8 or 10 minutes even, it's hard for me to compare with anybody else. I want to see one of these guys go like maybe an hour or 45 minutes. Then I'd have a better judgment of them as to how I think they would compare with some of yesteryears. But I just haven't seen that, so it's difficult for me to make a comparison.
Did you enjoy the WrestleMania show itself?
The WrestleMania show was fine, but my biggest thrill, I have to be honest, somebody said to me, pardon?
Oh, no, it's okay. It was.
Some people said to me, boy, was that a thrill to be in front of 70,000, 80,000 people. I have to be perfectly honest with you. My thrill was in Madison Square Garden, not WrestleMania. I mean, that was great to see all those people and all that. But as far as me, when I was introduced on stage, I was very grateful of the way they responded, you know, when the way they applauded, you know, when I was introduced. They gave me a wonderful, wonderful ovation. I appreciate it very much, but I wouldn't be honest of me if I said that was as exciting or anywhere near as exciting as being stepping in Madison Square Garden. That to me was the most exciting thing that I experienced while over there. Because, like you said, you know, I have such a history in Madison Square Garden, and to be able to go there one more time, you know, that's quite a thrill.
and definitely sell it out. It was truly an honor to see you get inducted. I didn't want to reveal too much about your induction speech. I know because I know it'll probably be available on DVD real soon. But
did you hear my whole speech?
I actually did stay for the whole speech. I even stayed to see you and Vince embrace at the end. And like I said, awesome.
Now, the reason why I asked is because when they showed it on Tuesday, they cut all the speeches way down. You know what I mean? And mine too, not as bad as some of the others, but they cut them all down. You know, like I think I spoke for maybe 25 minutes, and I think they showed about 8 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, on the TV. But then they cut all the every one of the Hall of Famers, like Mick Foley went very long, and they cut him very short, and Backlund, and all the others, because they had to cut it down to, I think, an hour, 15 minutes for television, whereas in the Garden it lasted over 3.5 hours.
It was fun, and everybody, it was awesome to see everybody stay till the end.
Well, very good. I was very pleased the way people treated me, because I didn't know what to expect, because it's been a long time, you know, these are all new fans, so I didn't know what to expect. So the way they received me, I was very grateful, and I appreciated it very, very much.
You definitely were a person who paved the way for this generation, and in the generation I grew up in, which was, I grew up in the late 80s and the 90s, as you were just exiting WWE. So, but I knew who you were, and I did follow some of your matches, and definitely enjoyed what you brought in, and was hoping one day that this day would come. And thankfully, it did come, and I'm glad you were able to be part of this and get to go home one more time.
Well, thank you. Thank you, very kind. I appreciate that.
Not a problem. On behalf of myself and Austin, Mr. Sammartino, it has been truly an honor to speak with you these last 30 minutes. We do realize it is actually past, well, it's actually about 30 minutes past 8 in your area. Mm-hmm. And we want to just say thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us and talk about your legendary career and what you've done and so forth.
My pleasure. It's been my pleasure, and I enjoyed being with both of you, and I thank you for having me on.
Sir. Well, you have yourself a great night, and thank Marty again as well. Your manager, Marty.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, and you too have a great night. Okay.